Welcome, everyone. My name's John Radwin, and I'm very happy to welcome you to today's event, sponsored by Seton Hall University's Institute for Communication and Religion. The Bhagavad Gita is a required freshman reading on our campus because it shares wisdom and reflects rays of divine light. To help everyone learn more, we're especially excited and honored that Mataji is visiting us on our East Coast lecture tour. She's visiting 8 universities. She just came from Duke and North Carolina State, and she's headed on to Princeton next. For today's event, Dr. Amar, Professor of Management in the Stillman School of Business, will formally introduce all of Mataji to you all. And then next, she'll share her guest lecture entitled Bhagavad Gita, the Essence of Upanishads. And for our final 15 minutes or so, we'll field questions from the audience. Dr. Amar, thank you for helping with today's event. Can you please introduce Mataji now?
Okay. Good morning, and special good morning to Mataji for being here among us. And Mataji, Pravrajika Divyanandaprana, is a member of the Shraddha, Sri Shraddha Mutt. And Mataji belongs to the Ramakrishna Sharda Mission in New Delhi, although it is headquartered in Calcutta. And addressed just as Mataji, which means revered mother from Sanskrit, and she has spoken at several universities, as my friend said earlier. And she is very well known in India and several countries, and her mutts are in Sri Lanka and Australia, and I assume there are other countries which probably I am not aware of. And she is visiting USA, and MIT is on her list, Princeton is on her list, and like my colleague said, Duke and North Carolina State have also been on her list. It was started by 8 sadhvic women, we could say monastic women, in 1954, following the directions from Swami Vivekananda. And since Swami Vivekananda was more into Advaita Vedanta, which means God, the creator or Brahma, and the creation, the jiva, are same. They belong in the same group, and one is in, like God is in all things that breathe, and all things that breathe are in God. So it is, that's the Hindu philosophy, and that is so unique, that gives every human the same importance. This is the basis of her teaching and basis of the teaching of Sri Shraddha Mattha. And this is where she is going to tell us a few things more about this Advaita. And Advaita, as I said earlier, is the leading philosophy of Hinduism. And demography doesn't make a different gender, color, and in fact, some believe to the extent that whether jiva means living or breathing, or nirjiva, who are not breathing, are also creation of God, and they all belong together. This is why animals, birds, and even stones and trees and all breathing people and God are all the same. So Mataji, so glad that you are here, and we will learn a lot more from you. Thank you so much.
Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste and a very good morning to all of you. Thank you for having me here. Such a joy to be here at Seton Hall University. And I was so happy to see the keen interest here by the Religious Studies Department and the regular study of the Bhagavad Gita. It's so wonderful. And well, I have no words to speak about Bhagavad Gita, I'm telling you, because it is such a deep scripture, giving us such a wonderful introduction to the inner spiritual life and the nature of human life, human consciousness, the means towards the highest goal, the harmony of the yogas. What is it that you don't find in the Bhagavad Gita? So thank you for giving me this topic. It's after my heart because I remember I studied the Bhagavad Gita when I was very young and I just got hooked to it. And the study continues even now. I just can't leave this scripture because it has such magnificent, concentrated ideas on the spiritual life and the spiritual goal of life. So it makes for a very elevating study. But first, before I go into Bhagavad Gita as the essence of the Upanishads, let me give you an introduction, or let me at least give you the backdrop of the Bhagavad Gita initially, to help us understand where exactly this conversation took place, why did it take place, and well, what was the special context of those times, why were these questions asked. So, the Bhagavad Gita you will find as part of the Mahabharata and the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata. The chapters from 25 to 42 of the Bhishma Parva, you will find the Bhagavad Gita there. But what is it about? The story, it's a long story, the Mahabharata. But let me condense it for you. It's a very interesting story because there are these two brothers, Pandu and Dhritarashtra. Actually, there were three brothers, but let's concentrate on these two. And the children of Pandu were called the Pandavas, and the children of Dhritarashtra were the Kauravas. The Pandavas were 5 in number, and the Kauravas were 100 in number. But although the fathers were brothers, these children never got along with each other. They were cousins. But the Pandavas always stood for righteousness and dharma. And the Kauravas always stood for unrighteousness and greed and covetousness and these kinds of things. So these two factions within the family were always at loggerheads with each other. When the Pandavas came to Hastinapur, and they also had their education there, they grew up there, the Kauravas did not like it, and they wanted the kingdom all for themselves. They wanted the sons of Pandu to be out of Hastinapur. And when it was time for the Pandavas to lay claim to the kingdom, because the kingdom originally belonged to Pandu, and so rightfully belonged to the Pandavas, the eldest son of the Kaurava family, Duryodhan, would not allow it. And in fact, he proclaimed that they would not have space, even that much space which the tip of a needle would occupy. They have no place here. So this led to the great war, what we call the Mahabharata. And the war was more a war for righteousness rather than a war for power or glory or land or kingdom. Because this is made very clear in the questions which Arjun puts to Krishna, which is the conversation of the Bhagavad Gita. See, there is a point in the war, just before the war began, when the third Pandava, whose name was Arjun, felt very, very bad about what was happening. And just before the war, he asked to be taken in between the two armies of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So he wanted to view what was the Kaurava army like. And there he saw his own cousin brothers. He saw his grandsire. He saw his gurus, his preceptors, and it pained him so much. And he said that how can I kill them? That's my extended family. And I don't want the kingdom at this cost. I'm not that ambitious. None of us are. So it's okay. We will drop the whole matter and I don't want to fight. So then comes up the words of the Lord Krishna, where he tells him, look, this war has no personal basis. It is not being done for you or your brothers. It is being done to establish righteousness on this earth. So don't take a personal view of it. It is meant for Loka Sangraha, the welfare of the entire Bharatvarsh, because almost all the kings of North India were involved in the war, either on this side or on the other. So it is meant to establish righteousness here, and it is not meant to, just for your family, or don't take it personally. In fact, renounce all personal attitudes, because your very nature is the self, which is the self of all beings. You are that. You are the Atman, O Arjuna. You are not this little personality, the third Pandava. You are not merely this. You are the Atman. And take that standpoint and do this war, because Arjuna was a key player in the war. He was a master archer, and they were relying completely on him to win the war. So Krishna had to tell him that do this war for personal reasons. It is not what it is meant for. So this entire illuminating dialogue between the two, just before the war began, is what we call the Bhagavad Gita. Now, this particular dialogue has tremendous spiritual concepts, and the entire understanding of life and consciousness and what the human individual is about, what is the nature of the self, and how does it connect with everything around you, everyone around you. And so then what is the purpose of this ghor karma, this great war, and how should you take it, and why you should do it? This entire thing is discussed. I can't tell you the marvelous ideas in this particular dialogue. I have really dipped into the Bhagavad Gita for many years, and always I come back renewed and rejuvenated and refreshed in mind, because ultimately it is telling you the nature of the soul and its destiny, and what karma or action is about, what the human personality is about. So it's a very deep dialogue. We will go into some of the essential, very important aspects of it. Let me go a little bit into the history now. When did this particular episode occur? So the Mahabharata actually dates back to 5,000 years, 5,000 years back. And the exact date of the Bhagavad Gita is placed at 3139 BC by Indian scholars. So that's a very long time back. And what was the venue of this? It was the battlefield. It was Kurukshetra, where this dialogue took place. Kurukshetra is very close to Delhi, where I live. Even today, if you go there, you will see the particular spot marked where the Bhagavad Gita actually is supposed to have taken place. And the whole battlefield, it was a battleground. The whole place is sort of identified as the Kurukshetra battlefield. And this great war, which involved most of North Indian kingdoms, was fought mainly for the purpose of not so that, they are siding with one family or the other. They are wanting to bring a certain amount of harmony and righteousness. That is why the entire battle was fought. So there's a lot of talk and discussion about dharma in the entire Mahabharata. Kauravas party, the party of the Kauravas, led by Duryodhan, was very unrighteous in their entire conduct, in their attitudes, not just towards their cousin brothers, but towards everyone. And that is why, to put them down, the great battle was fought. And then I would like to go into how big is the Bhagavad Gita. It consists of 700 verses. It's quite big. And it has 18 chapters. Now, how is this possible on a battlefield? You may ask this question. Such a long poem or discussion. It is said that Krishna, and this is part of the Mahabharata story, stopped time to converse with Arjuna. And once Arjun was convinced of his duty, his dharma in that particular context, then again times began. So the Almighty Lord has the power to handle time, space, and causation, isn't it? All the essential parameters of life and manifestation. So they are in His hands. So this is how it is described, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. And the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita is, it is the essence of the Upanishadic thought. Now you may ask, what are the Upanishads? See, all of us have heard of the word Vedas. They are the most ancient manuscripts available to humankind, and they are compendiums of knowledge consisting of Sanskrit mantras for sacrifice, describing the nature of existential reality, what was called Parabrahman, describing the nature of life and the human personality, and mantras for a whole lot of sacrifices, what were called yajnas in those days. So all these compendiums of knowledge are 4 in number: the Rig Veda, Yajurved, Samaved, and Atharvaved. But the most important part of these Vedas are the knowledge portion of the Vedas, which actually consists of ideas, concentrated ideas on the nature of existential reality, the nature of our primary existence, human consciousness, and what human life and destiny are about. So these intense discussions cannot be relegated to sacrificial mantras. So they were considered to be the knowledge portion, or what we call the Upanishads. And these have been extensively studied. This literature has been brought out separately because it essentially is what we call Vedant today. The very definition of Vedant is Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam, the evidence provided by the Upanishadic texts towards the nature of reality as it is Vedant. So this is the most important part of the Vedic literature. It's a complete philosophy in itself, and many streams and branches of philosophy have emerged from the Upanishadic thought. Now, amongst the Hindus, we consider the Bhagavad Gita to be the very essence of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the essence of the Vedas, but the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Upanishads. It holds in it the key ideas which the Upanishads give us, and it also gives us the means to them, the means to the understanding and realization of Upanishadic thought. So this is described in the Bhagavad Gita itself in a very beautiful verse. In the introductory verses of the Bhagavad Gita, you have this verse that Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gita Amritam Mahat, which means Sarvo Upanishado Gavo. If you consider all the Upanishads to be like cows, then Dogdha Gopalanandana, the milker of those cows, is Lord Krishna himself. And the one who drinks that milk, one who has that milk, are Arjun and all of us who are interested in the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita. And the milk is the Bhagavad Gita itself. So this is how it is described. Every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita ends with, like for example, if you take the second chapter, the Sankhya Yoga, it ends with Atha Dvitiyodhyaya Sankhya Yoga, and then it is a Yoga, Brahma Vidya, it is a Yoga Shastra. This is how it ends. This kind of description is there. So the Gita itself is describing its content. It is a Brahma Vidya. What does this mean? It is penetrating into the nature of ultimate reality, the nature of Brahman. That is the purpose of the text. Through this conversation, it's a penetration into the nature of pure consciousness, Brahman. And it is a Yoga Shastra, which means it gives you the means towards that end. It gives you the yoga the means to reach this existential reality. So you see, the Bhagavad Gita is a very, you can say, a complete scripture which is giving you the means and the end together. And since it is such an ancient scripture, you will find a lot of commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Lot of masterly commentaries. In fact, we approach the Bhagavad Gita through the commentaries. Even if you read it just like that, it's exhilarating. It's just takes you out of this world. But if you go into the commentaries, you get luminous ideas about many things. You have Shankar Bhashya on Bhagavad Gita, Sridhar Bhashya, Madhusudan Saraswati's work. So many commentaries. In fact, all the leading acharyas of the different systems of Indian philosophical thought have written their commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And even in modern times, you have Bal Gangadhar Tilak's commentary. So many of modern thinkers, philosophers, all of them have commented on the Bhagavad Gita, and it is the source of inspiration for a whole lot of thinkers in the modern world. In fact, it is like nectar to read the Bhagavad Gita. You will not find a single idea out of context, out of spiritual understanding. Everything is just concentrated spirituality in this dialogue. And it's a 700 verse documentation. So it's a huge poem, you can say. And it is the Bhagavad Gita, the words of the Lord Krishna, not Bhagavad Gita. It is not about the Lord. It is of the Lord. It consists of veritably the words of Krishna. So it is a very, very important scripture. There's no doubt about that. Then the Bhagavad Gita forms part of the Prasthana Traya, which means the three pillars of Hindu thought, Hindu philosophical thought. They have been identified to be the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutras. The Upanishads, I told you what they are. It's Vedanta, and Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Upanishads in a sense, and the Brahma Sutras are the logical support or evidence to the Upanishadic thought. The sutras created by Badarayan are called the Brahma Sutras. So these three together constitute the pillar of Hindu philosophical thinking, Prasthana Traya. And then, when was the Bhagavad Gita first translated? The original is in Sanskrit, but it's easy Sanskrit, you know. Anyone who is well-versed with Sanskrit will find a lot of meaning in those words. You just have to know the sandhi. You must be able to split the words properly and you'll get a lot of meaning out of it. But for those who don't know the original Sanskrit, it was translated into English. I think it was the first scripture, Hindu scripture, which was translated into English in 1785 by Sir Charles Wilkins. Because, you know, the first Governor General of India, Warren Hastings, the British Governor General of India, was a Gita enthusiast. So he had it translated. And throughout his life, he was dedicated to the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, he said, long after the British Empire goes out of India, generations will continue to be inspired by the thought of the Bhagavad Gita. He mentioned this. And today, really, Bhagavad Gita lives in our very veins and blood. And it's like the Bible of the Hindus of all denominations, deeply studied. The Bhagavad Gita is studied in various ways in India. One way is to go into the original scripture and discuss it. That is one way. The second way is you learn the chanting over a period of time. And there are Bhagavad Gita chanting competitions all over, especially in the South India. You will find a lot of these things going on. And another way is to have regular seminars on the philosophical thought of the Bhagavad Gita. It has even come into universities, not just in philosophy departments, but of course, philosophy and religious studies will have this, but also in the science of consciousness, you have the study of the Bhagavad Gita. So, a lot of activity and I would say mental churning is going on this. And if you want to know how many people have been inspired by this scripture, I can tell you that starting from the American transcendentalists, Emerson, Thoreau, Walt Whitman, and going to the German romantics, to the British Orientals, almost everyone was inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. And in India, almost every great thinker, philosopher, nationalist was inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. Gandhi, Vivekananda, Rajgopalachari, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, all our national leaders. We take this as a scripture, as par excellence. Um, the Bhagavad Gita is worshipped everywhere, but most importantly, it requires to be read and practiced. So, this is the introduction I would like to give to the Bhagavad Gita. And let us go a bit into the subject matter before I start the PowerPoint presentation on the very important aspects of the Bhagavad Gita. What is there in the Bhagavad Gita which has such wide appeal? See, first of all, the Bhagavad Gita is very, very inclusive. There's nothing exclusive about it. It is the science of consciousness and the technology of consciousness that it speaks of. So it has mass appeal in the sense it appeals to anyone, anywhere. As he just said in the introduction, there is nothing that that you can say the Bhagavad Gita belongs to Hindu thought. There's nothing in it like that. It is the study of the human soul, the nature of human consciousness, and the means to unravel or unfold human consciousness. And the nature of meditation, that is a wonderful chapter, the Dhyana Yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. The nature of devotion, Bhakti Yoga you have. And then the importance of karma, action, and the effects of action, what action leads to, what are the consequences of action. Extensive discussions on these. Then you have a whole lot of mind management techniques, so important to the modern world. Yes, a whole lot of discussion on the nature of the mind, how to control it, how to bring it into your hands. Because Arjun is an accomplished warrior. He has questions like any one of us who are accomplished in various fields of life. So he asked the question, how do I control this mind which is like the wind? And then the answers to that and the nature of the mind. That is why the importance of fundamental qualities like detachment, inner freedom, the meditative awareness, all this has been extensively dwelt upon. Then you have the Triguna theory being propounded there, which means why are we different mentally? Why do we have different attitudes? And what is the nature of the sattva, rajas, and tamasic minds? So how it determines our attitudes, how it determines our emotion and our behaviors. So a lot of behavioral psychology you will find there. A lot of relationship psychology you will find there. So it's a huge compendium of very great knowledge. This is what I would tell you. It is inexhaustible. I don't know how much I can tell you about the Bhagavad Gita, but there are a whole lot of magnificent ideas there. You can draw from any chapter. And he never goes into any other topic, That's the beauty of the Gita. He never talks of anything other than the intense spiritual life, the awakened consciousness. So you will find all of this in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, let me show you a few slides before we discuss some very important points. You see, this is the introduction to the Prasthanatraya and the mantra which I told you about, which describes Bhagavad Gita as the essence of the Upanishads. Sarvo Upanishado Gavo, Dogdha Gopala Nandana, Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta, Dugdham Gita Amritam Mahat. And then it contains the essence of all Upanishads and pathways for practical application. It dwells on the fundamentals of existence and describes the integration of yogas. Thus, it becomes, it's revered like the Bible of the Hindus and irrespective of their denominations. And you find the Prasthanatraya described there, the Upanishads, which is the Upadesha Prasthan or injunctive text. The Bhagavad Gita is considered the Sadhana Prasthan or the practical text, and the Bhagavad Gita is the Sutra Prasthan or formulative text, or you can say the logical support for Upanishadic thought. So these constitute the three pillars of Hindu philosophical thinking. Then we have the setting of the Bhagavad Gita, which I already described to you. The great war of Mahabharat fought between the Pandavas and Kauravas in 3139 BC, about 5,000 years back. And this is the timeline according to Indian scholars Aryabhatta and others. And then it is an integral part of Mahabharat, the Bhishma Parva, between chapters 25 to 42. First translated into English in 1785 by Charles Wilkins. It was called the Wilkins Gita and deeply influenced many, including Emerson, Aldous Huxley, Thoreau, Jung, Gandhi, Vivekananda, etc., etc. Many people. Now, the emphasis in the Bhagavad Gita is on karma and karma yoga because, you know, the Bhagavad Gita was given out at a point just before a great war was being fought. See, it didn't arise in some Himalayan cave where you were contemplating on eternal verities. No, it was given out on the eve, just before a war was fought. So the entire, philosophy there is go ahead and do your duty no matter what. And don't keep any personal ground for fulfilling your duties. In a sense, do your duty impersonally. Stand on your impersonal true nature as pure consciousness, as the Atman, and then go ahead and do what you ought to do, what is required of you to do for the welfare of everyone. So this is urged in so many ways in the Bhagavad Gita because, the natural doubt of Arjun was this: why should I fight? They are my own people. Why should I kill them? Then the answer is no, no, no. In this context, they are not your own people. You are fighting the battle for righteousness, to bring peace and harmony into the world. And that is why karmanneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You have only right to the action. You don't have the right to the fruits thereof, to the consequence of the action. Whether you win the war or you lose the war or whatever happens, you don't have a right over that. You're not supposed to think of that. Think only of your duty in the present context. See, this applies in every context of our lives. Please see. When you have an examination, we are in Seton Hall University. When you have an examination ahead of you, if you think, oh, will I pass? Will I fail? Will this happen? Will I get a job here? What will my parents say? What will this? Then you can't actually concentrate on what you have to do. Karmanneva adhikaraste. Just concentrate on what you have to do today. This is so very important. So this is what is being told here. You see, the principle of karma yoga. Karmanneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Don't think of the results of the fruits. Concentrate your entire vital energy on the work in hand. And ma karma phalaheturbu ma te sangostva karmani. Which means, let not attachment in any form nor inaction come into you. Just concentrate on the action to be performed and forget about the results and what will come out of it. And never resort to any form of attachment, which Arjun was having at that point of time. Yes. And never resort to inaction. Which means the human energy in our system is meant for a particular goal. So this clarity, if it comes into our minds, that my purpose is only to do the action in front of me, do my duties, that's all. And not to think too much. See, our problem is overthinking, isn't it? The overflow of thought makes us forget this. And the strong attachments and fears which we have make us forget this. Isn't this true? So that is why this very important shlok in the Bhagavad Gita, this has been, the inspiration of so many of our nationalist leaders, so many people around the world, that at the point of action, even when you have to make a decision, how should you be? Put down your thought process, which is constantly thinking of the pros and cons. Put it down. Just concentrate on your duty, what I ought to do in this particular situation. And shake off your attachments, shake off the this laziness or whatever puts you into inaction, shake it off and just concentrate on the action. And the beautiful philosophy there is, you see, when a soldier kills another soldier, we give him a medal for winning the battle. But if a common man kills somebody on the street, it's considered murder. The act is the same. What is the difference? Duty. Isn't it? Isn't the act the same? Anybody killing anybody on the street, it's murder. You'll be put into jail. But a soldier killing a soldier, and he is awarded for it on the frontier, he's awarded. Why? You are defending the borders for your people, for the nation. It's a selfless act of service. You're putting your life at risk to defend the country. So the same act becomes a yoga if it has a different motive or intention. The act is the same. It's killing. So this key point has to be understood even in the context of the Bhagavad Gita. In our own lives, you see how applicable all this is. If the motive behind your action is very clean, very unselfish, selfless, that very action becomes a yoga. It changes the entire karma phal, It changes the fruit of the action completely. And it will be applauded. It's a laudable act because you did it not for personal gains, not for the selfish gene. You did it with a bigger purpose. You saw the big picture and you did it. So you see, even an act like killing can become a yoga if it is done with this thing behind you. So this is the actual philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. Why is Arjun being urged to fight? For this reason. So the philosophy of the Karma Yoga is very deep. Any action yields fruit according to the motives behind the action. And if the motive is not good, you may be doing a very nice action, but there's no real good motive behind it. It will fail in its effect. This is a psychological law, please see, being described this way in the Bhagavad Gita. So our actions, more important than our actions are the motives behind our action, the intention, the will. What is it oriented towards? That is going to decide the consequences of the action, the fruit of the action. So this is an important slide. The main theme of Bhagavad Gita was Karma Yoga. The right attitude towards the action you perform. Because Arjun was in a very crucial phase, passing through a deep indecisiveness. And that's why the first yoga of the Bhagavad Gita was the Arjun Vishad Yoga, which means where Arjuna is full of sorrow and crying and has all the symptoms of high BP, He's sweating and heart rate has increased. All this is going on because I can't imagine killing. He puts it like this, I can't imagine killing my own people. But the actual fact is your attachments. The actual fact is, at this point, you are not able to take a decision. So that is why Karma Yoga. But Lord Krishna gives Karma Yoga after Sankhya Yoga, which is very interesting because Sankhya Yoga is about your real nature. It's the yoga of knowledge. So he takes him to his real nature, gives him the ideas that you are the Atman, you are the self functioning through body and mind. So your personality is secondary and your personal relationships are also tertiary. So don't base your philosophy of action on tertiary principles. Focus on the main thing. The main thing is you have to establish righteousness in this world because you are a Kshatriya prince. This is your duty. This is your dharma. So you are fighting the war. And not for my family or for my relationships, not for that. So you see, it's a very deep philosophy. At that point, anybody would have reacted like Arjun. And so this lesson is very important to understand in the Bhagavad Gita. It's a lesson for all of us. Do your duty without considering anything else at the point of action. Do your duty. And duty is a very important word, which means what is the right thing to do, what I ought to do in that condition. And without attachment. So you see, after Sankhya Yoga comes Karma Yoga, and then this is imparted in such a big way. It's a huge chapter, and it inspires Arjuna finally towards going into the war, and then he finally wins the war. Then another great idea of the Bhagavad Gita is, you worship through your own work. You worship the Supreme Lord through your own work. Yata pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. See, that's a beautiful shloka in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18. By performing one's natural occupation, one worships the Creator from whom all living entities have come into being, and by whom the whole universe is pervaded. By such performance of work, a person easily attains perfection. Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati. You worship Him through your duty, through your action. Whatever action, whatever our duties are. See, we are all maybe university people, you're teaching somewhere, you're working somewhere, you're professionals. Your everyday duty, work, can become a means to the worship of the divine. That is what he's saying. You don't have to keep a special time separate for worship or for yoga, whatever. Your everyday work can become worship. How does it become worship? When you do it with detachment, when you do it with the cleanest motive, and when you do it as an offering at the feet of the divine. So you see, people usually set apart time for yoga. We do all this. But if your action has the cleanest and the best possible motive, it will become a yoga. This is the message he's giving. That is why, Karma Yoga is a very big philosophy of life. I have seen such Karma Yogis in my life from at least 18 hours a day, 18 to 19 hours a day. They go on and on with their work, not thinking once, what is this getting me, or where am I going with this? It's my duty. I have to do it. My energy is meant for this. And it goes on, and they never get exhausted. This is not the workaholic category. They are doing it not because it's an impulse. They can't but do it. No, they are doing it very consciously. They are doing it consciously. They are doing it because they believe they are worshipping the Supreme through their action. And they never get exhausted. And people who may be setting apart time for meditation and all that, many times, if the mind is not prepared, they may not be actually meditating. This also happens. So always Karma Yoga is a foolproof philosophy, If you have the right attitude and you are in karma, it will take you very far in the spiritual life and in the evolution of your consciousness. So this is beautifully illustrated in this story which Vivekananda used to say. This is the story of the arrogant yogi and the realized Vyad. So let me just tell you the story. We are going into very serious stuff. Let's have a story here. This is the story of a young ascetic, tapasvi or yogi, who left his old parents at home, left everything and said, I want to practice my yoga. I don't have time for anything else. And went into the forest, sat under a tree, and for many, many months practiced a lot of tapasya, yoga. He did all this, and he did acquire some yogic powers. So it so happened that one fine day when he was sitting there, a crane put some droppings on him. And he was angry. And he looked up with anger, and he burnt up the crane. So that much of power he had acquired through his yogic practices. Now he was very proud. He thought, oh, I'm a real yogi now. See, I just looked at him and I burnt him up. So, well, everybody should respect me. I'm such a big person now. I'm a real yogi. So he stormed into the neighboring village and he stood with his bowl in front of, that's how it used to be in Indian villages. He held his bowl in front of the first house and asked for something to eat. Bhikshan dehi. The lady of the house, she called him out from within and said, "Please wait, sir. I'll be coming in a few minutes." And she took almost half an hour. And the yogi was very, very angry, really angry, and wanting to teach her a lesson. How dare she make me wait? I'm a yogi. She doesn't know that. I practice so much. I can burn up birds. So she came out slowly, and then she looked into his eyes and said, "Look, I was serving my husband. That's my primary duty. I was serving my family, and I can only give you food after that. So please don't mind my coming late. And I'm not that crane which you burnt up in the forest. You can't do anything to me." And she gave him his arms, and he was so stunned. How did she know I did that in the forest? How did she come to know? So then he came to his senses and he said, "But how did you know, mother? How did you know I did that in the forest?" And she said, "I know what is in your mind. And I acquired this power just by serving my family, by my everyday duties to my family, by my commitment to my duties, not through your yoga, not through your tapasya. I did not acquire this by that. And if you want to know more about this, go and learn it from a butcher." And he gave her his address to him. She gave him his address. Learn it from this. Vyad means butcher, actually. He has all the knowledge of Karma Yoga. How you can reach the highest just through work, your everyday work. Go and learn it from him. So now the yogi was stunned and shocked at what he saw, and he took the address and went there, and he really met this butcher, whose everyday task was to butcher animals. And the yogi had always considered this to be a very, very mean task, and one shouldn't be doing it, and it's a low grade of work, all these ideas he had in mind. But the butcher gave him such valuable ideas on what affects your spiritual consciousness. It is not the type of work you do, but the attitude towards the work. So every work is sacred, every work is holy. And he said, "Look, the work which I am doing, I have to do it to fend for my family, to support my family. My old parents are there. I have a wife and children. I do it only for that. And I don't think of anything besides that. I do it as an offering at the feet of the divine." So this entire dialogue is called Vyadha Gita. It is another Gita, where he actually teaches him the principles of Karma Yoga. How to work without attachment, without strong negativity within you, without anger, without too much of possession and greed for the results of the work. How to work without all this, with a very composed, clear state of mind. And he says, this gives me the highest yoga. So when does karma become karma yoga? When it is done with the purest of intentions and motives and without attachment, as a duty. So this is what this story is about, and Vivekananda was very fond of it. He was a great proponent of Karma Yoga. Then the Gita gives us wonderful ideas on how to attain harmony within ourselves and around ourselves. Most important thing. So it says, "Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yagne pratishthitam." The duties for human beings are described in the Vedas, and the Vedas are manifested by God Himself. Therefore, the all-pervading Lord is eternally present in acts of sacrifice, in acts of yajna. So we will discuss what this means. Now, the Vedas, they are constantly talking of these words, yajna, ritam, And you will see, they will say knowledge is based on yajna. What does this mean? We require to understand this because it forms a sizable portion of the Bhagavad Gita. And it is exactly yajna means being able to offer. In those days, it was the symbolism was offering into fire, sacrificial fires. But the idea is to be able to offer in all kindness, in all sympathy, with a good attitude. And the very dhatu, yaj, from which yajna comes, it means actually to give of oneself, to be able to do this. So this keeps up the cyclic nature of life, because life is about interconnectedness, isn't it? Giving, exchange, a healthy exchange between the individual and the cosmos, the individual and the people around the individual. So a healthy exchange between these two will bring about yajna, harmony. This is described again and again in the Bhagavad Gita. So there actually Krishna tells Arjun that if you do your duty as a yajna, you fight the war as a yajna, it is a cosmic yajna, you will see, you will come in harmony with everything that is good and noble in life. You will attain to universal harmony. It is done only through yajna, he says. It will lead to the highest knowledge. Don't think it is a massacre of your people. Don't have such silly ideas, because there is no personalized self here. You are fighting the war for world peace. You're fighting the war for harmony. And that will naturally come if you have the spirit of yajna within you. So this yajna and rhythm is again and again actually spoken about in the Bhagavad Gita. And the spirit of yajna is about acknowledging the interconnectedness of life and maintaining this healthy exchange between the individual and the cosmos by sharing, caring, giving. What we draw from life, to be able to put back into it, to be able to replenish it, that is yajna. So the symbolism was, you light a fire and keep pouring oblations into it. You are making offerings. It was symbolic representation of how your life should be. It should be an offering. It should be a giving for universal life, towards universal life. So this was the actual symbolism. And today, actually speaking, it's so practical, this idea, that you can even address climate change through the spirit of yajna. I teach this in some of the universities in India. The idea is this: you see, any cycle in nature, all the biogeochemical cycles, they are being maintained because of a healthy exchange of gases. The carbon cycle, for example, whatever of carbon we take from the atmosphere, whatever gets into living bodies or into the oceans, has to be returned back to the atmosphere, isn't it? A renewal should take place. Or you must be able to replenish what you draw from nature. Otherwise, there's an imbalance and you disrupt the cycle. So what happens when you disrupt the cycle? Carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere and leads to all these climate changes. And we know how tremendous they are. They are even melting the Arctic caps. Huge. If you go to the Himalayas, you will actually see the level of meltdown. And it's a matter for concern for the whole globe. So why is this happening? Only because we have increased. A 2022 report says we have increased the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by 52% compared to the pre-industrial age. And all due to the industrial scale mining of fossil fuels, your coal and petroleum and gas and all this. And why? We are always zooming about wanting to go here and there, maybe to no purpose. We don't know why, but it's the rajas within us which is driving us. So you see, when we go into things like this, we are affecting a global change inadvertently, without knowing it. And when we disrupt these biogeochemical cycles, it comes back to us. So we have bad air, we have pollution at every level, and we have the ice caps melting. And you have high degree of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So please remember, the biosphere is just begging for harmony and balance. It will come through the spirit of yajna, because primarily yajna means What you take from universal life, you must be put back, you must be able to put back into it. Otherwise, don't take. Don't take it. So unless this healthy exchange is there, we will disrupt everything in nature. And sustainable living will not become possible. What is sustainable life? Today we are constantly using that word. What exactly do we mean by that? When we use the word sustainable, what it means to say is we are capable of achieving human development goals without disrupting the cycles of nature, without compromising on natural resources. If we are able to do that, it will be sustainable living and not otherwise. And without doing that, we can't survive on the planet. And we have only one planet to survive upon. So you see, the spirit of yajna should pervade. This is repeatedly insisted upon in the Bhagavad Gita. Take from life only as much as you can put back. There is everything for people's need, but nothing for our greed. And if we are greedy and wanting more and more and too restless to even see the mistakes we are making, then it will disrupt nature beyond repair. So you can actually address climate change through the spirit of yajna. If the principles of yajna are taught at an early age, our generations will be able to handle this very effectively. But it requires a lot of, that's why universities are the most important places where all this should take place, these discussions. And then it is said in the Bhagavad Gita that yajna actually leads to divine knowledge. How does it do that? Yajnarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. Work must be done as a yajna to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties without being attached to the results. If you do it as an offering to universal life, because you have drawn so much from it. See, I always tell my students, for a simple plate of food to come in front of you, how many people have worked for it? Starting from that farmer who sows seeds. 15 people have worked for it. Have I thanked them when I consume that food? Do I do anything for them? At least a prayer, at least some way of exchange. Human life is all about exchange. Even the very air you're breathing, the oxygen you're taking in is given by plants. And what did we give back? So the idea is this, to maintain this healthy exchange, we require the spirit of yajna. Offer and give as much as you can and be prayerful, respectful, kind, grateful in everything. And that will bring about the spirit of yajna in whatever we do. If we are not grateful, we cannot live as good human beings. You cannot be happy because life is about exchange. No man is an island. So this is insisted upon in the Bhagavad Gita in so many ways, you see. Shreyan dravya mayad yajna jnana yajna parantapa sarvam karma akhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. O subduer of enemies, sacrifice performed in knowledge is superior to any mechanical material sacrifice. After all, O Partha, all sacrifices of work culminate in knowledge. So you can sacrifice in different ways. In the earliest Vedic yajnas, they used to offer ghee, butter and clarified butter and seeds, teal and all this. It was symbolic. And then you can also sacrifice in terms of food, offering food to someone, offering education, offering ideas. But he says the highest offering is the offering of knowledge and spiritual knowledge. That's the highest yajna. And it leads to divine knowledge. So these ideas are there in the Bhagavad Gita. Many types of sacrifices are described. And then this is told, because nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate, tatsvayam yoga samsiddha kalena atmani vindati. There is nothing more purifying than knowledge. And who realizes this? The yoga samsiddha, one established in yoga, will realize this quickly. That it is knowledge that brings about the complete unfoldment of your consciousness. You reach the culmination of human evolution through knowledge. And yajna leads to that knowledge. Right action performed with the right attitude as a sacrifice to universal life. So you keep your accounts clear. Karma is the actual account. The bank account is just the material aspect. But your karma is your actual account. And you keep those accounts clear, you will attain to the highest knowledge. This is the idea. Then you have the four yajnas, four yogas, beautifully harmonized in the Bhagavad Gita. Ye tvaksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastham achalam dhruvam sanniyanyendriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhayah te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hite rata. Which means the personal, impersonal, both aspects can be approached and worshipped. The path is more difficult for the impersonal, but by harmonizing the yogas, you can do it. See, but those who worship the formless aspect of the absolute truth by restraining their senses and being even-minded everywhere, such persons engaged in the welfare of all beings also attain to me, the Lord says. So all these yogas, see, they outlined there, have been given as a means to this highest knowledge, the knowledge of the impersonal. Brahman, Brahma Vidya. So you have Raja Yoga, Sanniyamendriya Gramam. It is in a sense control of action, speech and mind. Raja Yoga is actually the science behind yoga. You know, how do you convert all of your vital energy into pure consciousness? Then you have Jnana Yoga, that is the pursuit of the unmanifest through Jnana, through knowledge. Avyaktam paryupasate. Then Karma Yoga, the equanimity required in all situations and detachment from fruits of action. Performing action but with detachment. That is Karma Yoga. Then you have Bhakti Yoga, which means, it actually means the love of God and service of all human beings, because God resides in all human beings. So all these yogas are described in the Bhagavad Gita, and there's a harmony between these yogas. See, if you go into the religious history of India, many philosophies were at loggerheads with each other. The Dvaita philosophy would not admit of Advaita, Advaita would not admit of Dvaita or Vishishtadvaita. So all this was there. But in the Bhagavad Gita, you will find a harmony of everything. All the different systems of philosophy, all the different yogas, and everything has been described together as means to the ultimate. So this is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. Then, as I told you, you have enormous messages for mind management. See how beautifully it is described. The root of all problems is described like this in the Bhagavad Gita. Dhyayato vishayan pumsak sanghastesho pajayate sanghat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate. It doesn't end there. Krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smritir bhramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. What it means to say is, while contemplating on the objects of the senses, one develops attachment towards them. From attachment comes anger, because all your desires are not going to be satisfied. So it will give rise to anger. Sanghastesha sanghat sanjayate kama. From desire comes anger. From anger comes krodhat bhavati sammoha, delusion. From delusion comes smritir bhramsha, that is the destruction of memory. And from the destruction of memory, when you don't know what is the right thing to do in any particular situation, comes the all-destructive force of ignorance, which means you will do the wrong action and fall into dire consequences. So the entire thing has been outlined. The sequence of events leading to wrong action, bad action, and the consequences of downfall. So this is an important sequence in the Bhagavad Gita, how the human mind behaves when it has strong desire and attachment, and when it concentrates on merely the sense objects of life. Then also you can control the whole situation. This is also described. So is the remote in your hand? Krishna says it is. He says, Uddharet atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhu atmaiva ripuratmana, which means you can raise yourself by yourself. Just like how you can denounce yourself by the wrong actions. And atmaiva hyatmano bandhu, you are your own best friend or your own worst enemy, depending on how you have trained your mind. And the means to the training of the mind also has been outlined. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairakyena cha grihete. By practice and detachment, you can train your mind towards making the right decisions, the right actions. Because Arjuna tells Krishna at one point that it is mano durnigraham chalam. It is very difficult to stop this mind and control it. It's like the wind, and I can't control it. And Krishna says it is difficult, but it is not impossible. You can do it through practice and through detachment. So such ideas, you will find how the mind can be disciplined and turned inward. Then the divine and the demonic in man are also described in the Bhagavad Gita. I have put a few verses there. Abhayam sattva samshuddhi jnana yoga vyavasthitihi danam damascha yajnascha swadhyayastapajanavam. See, the main qualities of the divine in man are fearlessness, purity of mind, steadfastness in spiritual knowledge, charity, control of the senses, sacrifice, study of sacred books, austerity and straightforwardness, non-violence, truthfulness, absence of anger, renunciation, peacefulness, restraint from fault-finding, compassion towards all living beings, absence of covetousness, gentleness, modesty and lack of fickleness, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, bearing enmity towards none and absence of vanity. So these are the qualities which we consider divine, and they can be cultivated in man. The demonic is also described, qualities of hypocrisy, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. And whatever you feed will grow within you. If you feed the divine will grow. So the fulfillment of life is finally described, this last slide, as a life lived in self-knowledge with complete awareness coming into full bloom within your system. And it's supposed to be the highest joy the human mind can experience. Yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tataha yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Having gained that state, one does not consider any attainment to be greater. Being thus established, one is not shaken even in the midst of the greatest calamity. See, what a huge gain it would be if this was possible in our lives. Where you have just not the synthetic joy of life, but original happiness blooming right from within you all the time, and you remain equanimous in all situations and never get derailed with negativities in your life. So this is a possibility. This is the actual sthita prajna avastha which Lord Krishna describes, the man of equanimous intelligence and vision, where his mind always is imbued with deep awareness and great calmness and control, being able to make the right decisions, full of awareness and joy by itself, and always doing the right thing. This is a possibility in human life. And this is described as the goal of all human striving. So I have tried to summarize a few things in the Bhagavad Gita. I think we should stop the presentation here and take up Q&A. We have another 20 minutes. I hope you will put your questions on the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, and how it can be applied to our everyday lives. Yes, thank you. Yes, please.
I'm still kind of thinking of it in my mind, but for my students, thank you so much, first of all. This has been so helpful.
Everybody, when you ask questions, give them
Oh, my name is Elizabeth Redwine, and I teach in the Coordinate Journey. And we read a selection from the Bhagavad Gita in Journey. And I see many of my colleagues here today, and I know we're all grateful. I've taken pages of notes. One thing I would love for you to speak a little bit more on, and I am going to have to leave a little bit early because I teach at 11, but I think the idea of the self in this text is different from the way at least I was raised to think of the self. I actually think this is a much healthier, interconnected idea of the self than maybe an individualistic idea of the self, which
Yes.
perhaps we see a lot in this country, in my mind, again, unfortunately. So I just took notes on that, and I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, what a beautiful question. She's asking about self-knowledge. Yeah, how is the self understood in the Bhagavad Gita? See, the Sankhya Yoga is marvelous commentary on self and what the self means. What is the human being about? So the picture given to us in the Bhagavad Gita is, it's the picture of the human personality paradigm, and the very core of this paradigm is a unit of pure consciousness, what is called the Atman, a unit of pure consciousness, which is divine in nature. It is a spark of Brahman. It is of the very nature of the ultimate divinity. But it is enshrouded by this body-mind complex. So we consider ourselves to be personalities. And the mind is different. Each mind is different, and each mind has so many unique qualities. We identify only with that, without realizing that the core reality of our personality is the same. It is the same. So we are identified deeply with the body and mind, but have no clue of the self. This is the great irony about the human experience. We know so much about external reality, but not enough about our own awareness of ourselves. And what is being called the Atman here is a unit of pure consciousness, which is a spark of divine light itself. And so that is your real unchanging identity. He will tell you that. Akledyoyam. There are beautiful verses on this. Adahyoyam, which cannot be touched by fire or weapons or anything. It cannot be, made moist by water. It cannot be touched by anyone. That is your unchanging reality. That is the Atman which you are. So stand on this knowledge and fight, he says. And that's why he says that at the most, you only destroy the body and mind of a person, because they are corrupt now. The Kauravas represent the evil force. So you have to put them down. But in their real nature also is the self. So that divinity can never be touched nor destroyed. So don't worry about killing them. They will only get a better birth through a righteous war like this, where they will be able to understand that they stood for something vicious and that is why they were brought down. So this understanding of the core truth about the human personality and how it functions through this body-mind complex, this is one of the main features of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why it is a Brahma Vidya. It is meant for self-knowledge, introducing you to your true self. Yes. So this knowledge is something which should be part and parcel of every life, isn't it? Whether we are warriors or doctors or engineers or teachers, standing on this, my true self, my true being. The individual body is not what defines me. That is a kind of covering I'm wearing. Like we wear clothes, we wear the body. It will change after some time. But what doesn't change is the self. Pure consciousness, so I am that. So actually, it is unique. Yes. Personality is one thing, self is another thing. It's seen like that. And you are the self. So divine knowledge means this, getting introduced to your true being, unchanging being. In fact, all Eastern religions speak of this. Yes.
I have a question about
Please
the bird.
introduce
I'm
yourself.
sorry, excuse me, yes. I'm Gloria Thurmond, and I'm a retired professor here as of last August, and now I am adjunct, which I love that position. Music. I also, with Professor Dr. Redwine, I have taught for many years the Bhagavad Gita, and it's always an amazing text to me, and it's such a privilege to be able to do so, and it certainly has influenced and impacted the way in which I practice my own religion, which is not Hinduism, but it has opened up a world where there are questions that are answered into the pure consciousness of our existence that oftentimes we don't quite understand, or there's language that seems to not be as clear to some of us. But my question is the fact that it is such a text that I'm sure that people of the Hindu practice know. Is it something that is pervasive? I'm wondering about the fact as to whether or not it's the teachings are accessible to all levels of
In
people
India?
who practice.
Yes.
Or is there some
No, no.
may not have access?
No, there's no such thing, at least with regard to the Bhagavad Gita. It's an open book available to everyone. And even if you don't go to the commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, because a whole lot of people have given commentaries, still just going to the text with the word meaning will make a lot of sense to just anyone on the planet. That's why I told you there's nothing exclusive about Bhagavad Gita. It is not a standard text for Hindu philosophy or thought. It is speaking about human life and human consciousness, and it applies to everyone on the planet. So that's why it's like any science, you know. Science is, you do science in India, you get the same results. You do it in the US, you get the same results. It's the science of consciousness they are speaking of.
Mataji means to say, not for Hindus.
Yes.
Millennia or a few millennia, 2 millennia ago, whereas as Mataji showed us, 31, 39 BC is the year when Bhagavad Gita was recited. And your question is very valid. It wasn't written for Hindus. There was no word like Hindu. It was written for human beings. It's all the people, all people who are living and breathing and entities in themselves. And nobody really had to be Hindu. All you had to do is go, do, believe in whatever. And even today, because Hindus do not allow conversion. They just don't believe you can be converted into Hindu. So if you are born and you are raised through Hindu principles and Hindu values and all that, you become Hindu. But all you have to do is you just start practicing.
Yes.
And you start believing you are. And that's it. That's all that matters. And nobody can challenge you.
Yeah. I understand. Thank you.
When Vivekananda was in this country, that I believe that a Hindu should become a better Hindu through all this, a Christian a better Christian, a Muslim a better Muslim. It's got nothing to do with, it's very, very inclusive, the entire text. It has got nothing to do with exclusivity in any form. It does not apply just to Hindu philosophical systems or Hindu thought. It's a research into human consciousness. And it's giving you the transformative principles of human consciousness, which are the yogas. How to transform your consciousness, the technology of consciousness, you can say. That is the yogas. So it dwells on all this. In fact, you won't find the word Hindu anywhere.
Like Mataji said, Vedas are again written for humans. There is no talk in any Vedas about religion. It is like how you can be a good person. There is no dogma, there is nothing.
That's why it is so well received everywhere.
Exactly. I found them so difficult. The Vedas, I start to read, understand a little bit, and then stop, and then come back. That's it.
Translated the song of the Lord, not song about the Lord.
Yes.
I think that sometimes makes
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
So therefore, it's being spoken directly to.
That's right. That's right. It's like being spoken to our soul. Oh soul, listen, this is your true nature. That's the language. You know, it's a soul to soul conversation. And Arjun represents any of us. Yes. When we are battling the things in your life, all these ideas come to, you can use them. They are very, very applicable. So I think Bhagavad Gita is, that's why, very, very practical.
What says there is only the creator and the created. That's it.
Yes.
The creator, and they are one. They are linked and they're united. That's what Advaita is,
Yes.
which they teach.
I'll ask a question. I think most of you know me, but my name is John Radwin. I direct our Institute for Common Religion here at Seton Hall, and I help produce this event. Like Dr. Redwine said, I've been teaching the Bhagavad Gita for many years in the United States to students who are raised as individualists. And last year I had one of my toughest teaching challenges ever because I was a guest teacher, a substitute teacher, and I had to teach through the computer, it was remote. And since they weren't my students, I couldn't control them, so none of them had their cameras on. It was just me speaking to mysterious students on the other end. And I knew they were there because they were logged in, but I didn't know they were listening or anything. And so I just did my best for at least a half an hour. And then finally a little digital hand came up, and so I said, "Great, what's your question?" He said, "Is all of this real?" And that was a really tough question because, like, I wasn't even sure that he was real. Right? It was just a voice in the machine. So I did my best, but I'd love to hear your view. Is all of this real?
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
And Descartes, who gave us Cartesian coordinates, in later life, he refused to accept his existence. And he said, when I am sleeping and dreaming, I feel that is real. And when I wake up and I come here, I feel this is real. What is real? I don't know. I am confused. And so the question he asked, I think very smart question, because he was listening to things that were not real based on his knowledge. So it's a matter of knowledge. And our knowledge at a lower end will not make us know what is real. But as we learn more and our horizon is broadened, then we find that there are things which really I wasn't aware of. To me they were not real, but they actually are. And the difference is, if in reality you want to go and touch it and retrace it or experience it, you can. But when it is something which is imaginary, you can only maybe dream about them and see them in dream. Like Mataji was talking about Kurukshetra. When I was very young, I went to Kurukshetra, and the pond at which the recitation of Bhagavad Gita took place is still there, and they actually have identified the place where Krishna stood at night, and they built a huge statue of Krishna right now. So this is the difference between fiction and reality. And the question John's student asked, was really smart and he was the one who was listening. Others probably were. If one came and gave you evidence, like they say, if there is one cockroach, then there are so many cockroaches behind that we can't see. So if one person is smart, then there are so many people smart around that person. So it was a good class.
I think it's time. Is it time?
So on behalf of the Institute for Communication and Religion, I'd like you all to please clap once more for our guest.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank everyone who came together to make this event possible. So here at Seton Hall, of course, we had Dr. Amar, who gave our wonderful introduction, and then we have Emily, who did the publicity, and we'll do some of the follow-up. And we've got Farnsworth working with Chris on the video team. And then remotely, we'd like to thank our colleagues in Nauru for distributing the live media. And then, of course, a great thank you to everybody on Mataji's team. So again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day today.
It should be available on Kamaru. Kamaru has a special channel.
Yeah, and it's on the Seton Hall YouTube channel.
Professor John Radwan for arranging such.
Yes, yes.